You've been taught that transformation requires struggle, endless techniques, and years of spiritual work. But what if I told you that quantum shifting is so simple? Most people miss it entirely. Thoth understood something we've forgotten. The ancient Egyptian god of wisdom didn't record the laws of the universe through force or complexity. He achieved perfect attunement by recognizing that consciousness and reality operate as one electromagnetic field. The most profound truths hide in plain sight, not through mystery, but through their elegant obviousness. Here's what's fascinating. Every moment you're trying to work on yourself spiritually, you're actually creating resistance to the shifts you desperately want. Your ego mind rejects simplicity because it threatens the very structures keeping you trapped in limitation. The emerald tablets reveal that quantum leaps happen in stillness, not effort. There's a specific frequency signature that activates these shifts, one that modern seekers have buried under layers of unnecessary complexity. What you're about to discover will fundamentally change how you approach reality itself. Picture this. You're finally experiencing those synchronicities you've read about for years. Numbers appearing everywhere, perfect strangers offering exactly what you need, doors opening effortlessly. And what's your first reaction? Fear, suspicion. This can't be right. It's too easy. Welcome to the spiritual ego's greatest trick, convincing you that struggle equals worthiness. Thoth understood something about human psychology that modern neuroscience is just beginning to catch up with. Our minds are literally wired to reject ease. When the ancient Egyptian priests asked him why so few could access the quantum field, despite having all the knowledge, his response was profound. The mind creates elaborate fortresses to avoid seeing its own simplicity. Think about your own spiritual journey. How many courses have you taken? How many techniques have you mastered? How many hours have you spent in meditation, trying to get somewhere? The spiritual marketplace has turned awakening into a complex achievement system because that's what our conditioned minds expect. We've been programmed since childhood that anything worthwhile requires struggle, sacrifice, and years of dedicated effort. But here's what Thoth taught the initiates behind closed temple doors. The quantum field responds to alignment, not effort. In fact, effort creates resistance. When you're pushing, striving, and forcing, you're operating from the frequency of lack, the very vibration that keeps you stuck in limitation. Your brain interprets this ease as dangerous because it's designed for survival, not miracles. The amygdala, your brain's alarm system, constantly scans for threats. When life starts flowing too smoothly, when manifestations begin appearing without the familiar struggle, your nervous system actually interprets this as a red flag. Something must be wrong, it whispers. Good things don't come this easily. I've watched this pattern destroy more quantum shifts than any other factor. Sarah, a client of mine, spent 3 years studying manifestation techniques. The moment she simplified her approach and things started flowing, dream job offer, perfect apartment, ideal relationship, she subconsciously sabotaged everything. Created drama where none existed. Started fights with her new partner. Found reasons to doubt the job opportunity. Why? Because her identity was built around being someone who had to work hard for everything. This is the identity crisis that stops most people cold. If quantum shifting is simple, what does that say about all those years of struggle? What about the spiritual identity you've built around being a seeker? What about all the money spent on courses, retreats, and healing sessions? The ego mind would rather maintain familiar suffering than embrace unfamiliar ease. Thoth called this the veil of complexity, the mind's tendency to overcomplicate truth to avoid actually embodying it. The intellect, brilliant as it is for navigating physical reality, becomes a barrier when accessing higher dimensional frequencies. It wants to analyze, categorize, and systematize experiences that are inherently beyond mental comprehension. Watch how this shows up in your own life. When synchronicities increase, do you analyze them to death instead of simply receiving them? When your intuition gives you clear guidance, do you second-guess it with mental reasoning? When life becomes peaceful, do you unconsciously create problems because peace feels boring or somehow wrong? The cultural programming runs deep. We live in a society that glorifies the hustle, celebrates the grind, and makes heroes out of those who sacrifice everything for success. This creates a vibrational mismatch with quantum principles, which operate through flow, ease, and natural unfolding. You can't force a flower to bloom faster by pulling on its petals. Some of these deeper psychological patterns are too sensitive to share publicly, That's why we reserve our most powerful insights for our free Insights Academy newsletter, where you'll also receive a complimentary copy of the Kabbalion for a limited time. Here's what Thoth understood that most spiritual teachers miss. True power lies in surrender, not force. But surrender threatens every survival pattern we've developed. Our conditioning tells us that letting go equals giving up, that surrender means weakness. The ego interprets surrender as death, which in a sense, is island. It's the death of the false self that believes it must struggle to be worthy. The most profound shifts happen when you stop trying to make them happen, when you release the need to control the how, when, and where of your manifestations, when you trust the intelligence of the quantum field more than your strategic mind. But this requires a complete reorientation of how you define progress and success. Instead of measuring advancement by how much you're doing, you start recognizing it by how aligned you feel. Instead of tracking techniques mastered, you notice the quality of your inner state. Instead of counting hours spent in spiritual practice, you observe how naturally life flows. The quantum field doesn't care about your spiritual credentials. It doesn't check your meditation streak or validate your healing certificates. It responds to one thing: the purity of your frequency. And that frequency isn't something you achieve, it's something you remember you already are. This is why quantum shifting appears so simple to those who get it, yet remains invisible to those still trapped in the complexity trap. They're looking for the elaborate system, the secret technique, the missing piece of information. Meanwhile, the answer has been staring them in the face all along. Stop trying so hard to become what you already are. The spiritual ego's final defense mechanism is making you believe that if it's simple, it can't be powerful, that if it's easy, it can't be real, that if it doesn't require years of study, it must be superficial. This is perhaps the most sophisticated lie of all, because the most profound truths are always elegantly simple. Here's what Thoth understood that modern quantum physicists are only beginning to glimpse. Reality isn't built from matter that somehow develops consciousness. It's the complete opposite. Consciousness is the fundamental fabric, and what we call physical matter is simply consciousness expressing itself at different vibrational frequencies. This isn't mystical poetry, it's measurable physics. When you observe an electron through sophisticated equipment, you're not just passively watching. Your consciousness is literally collapsing infinite potential into a single specific reality. The electron doesn't choose where to appear. Your observational consciousness selects which of the infinite possible locations becomes real in your experience. But here's where most people miss the profound implications. If consciousness shapes reality at the quantum level, then your internal state isn't just influencing your experience, it's selecting which version of reality you inhabit moment by moment. The quantum field operates like a massive echo chamber, but it's not echoing your thoughts or your words. It's mirroring your actual energetic signature. And here's the problem. Most people have no idea what they're actually broadcasting. Let me give you a concrete example. Sarah spends 20 minutes every morning visualizing abundance. She sees herself in a beautiful home, driving her dream car, checking her healthy bank account. She feels genuinely excited during these sessions. But the moment she opens her eyes, her nervous system activates patterns that were coded during childhood, patterns of scarcity, unworthiness, and fear. Her stomach tightens when bills arrive. She apologizes before stating her prices. She checks her bank balance with the same anxiety her mother had when money was discussed. Sarah thinks she's broadcasting abundance because that's what she's consciously focusing on. But her nervous system is transmitting scarcity at frequencies far more powerful than her morning visualization. The field doesn't care about your conscious intentions. It responds to your authentic energetic state, the frequency generated by your thoughts, emotions, beliefs, and nervous system patterns operating in harmony or discord. Thoth understood that thoughts aren't just mental events, they're electromagnetic phenomena with measurable signatures. Modern neuroscience confirms this. Every thought generates electrical activity that extends beyond your skull. When your thoughts align with your emotions and your nervous system feels safe with your desires, you create what Thoth called coherent transmission. But when you're sending mixed signals, wanting love while believing you're unworthy, desiring success while fearing visibility, asking for change while terrified of the unknown, you create what we might call energetic static. The field receives contradictory information and responds with contradictory results. Watch how this plays out in daily life. You say yes to opportunities, while your body language screams no. You ask for partnership while your energy broadcasts, I'm too much work. You want financial freedom while your nervous system associates money with danger, conflict, or loss of love. These aren't character flaws, they're signal interference patterns. Most people experience what I call energetic leakage. Their intentions lose power through doubt, urgency, and attachment. Doubt creates frequency wobbles. Urgency signals scarcity. Attachment generates resistance because it implies you don't already have what you're seeking. Think about how Thoth accessed universal knowledge. Historical accounts describe him entering states of profound stillness, becoming so receptive that information flowed through him effortlessly. He wasn't trying to force insights or desperately grasping for answers. He achieved perfect coherence between his desire to know and his willingness to receive. This is radically different from how most people approach manifestation. They add more energy, more visualizations, more affirmations, more techniques, when what's needed is signal clarity. It's like trying to improve radio reception by turning up the volume when the real issue is tuning to the right frequency. Coherence occurs when your conscious desires, emotional state, and nervous system patterns align completely. Your thoughts say, I'm ready for love. Your emotions feel genuinely worthy of partnership, and your body feels safe being seen and chosen. When these three levels synchronize, you transmit a clear, powerful signal that the field can mirror back to you. But here's perhaps the most revolutionary insight from Thoth's teachings. We don't actually create reality. We select which pre-existing reality we experience through our vibrational frequency. Every possible version of your life already exists in quantum potential. Your consciousness acts like a radio dial, tuning into whichever frequency matches your authentic energetic state. This explains why forcing techniques fail so spectacularly. When you try to muscle your way into a different reality through sheer mental effort, you're operating from the assumption that you need to create something that doesn't exist. But if every possibility already exists in the quantum field, your job isn't creation, it's calibration. The field responds to authenticity, not performance. You can't fake coherence any more than you can fake a radio frequency. Either you're tuned to the station or you're not. Either your internal state matches the reality you want to experience, or it doesn't. This is why people can do everything right. Perfect vision boards, daily affirmations, powerful visualizations, and still experience the same patterns. They're trying to override their authentic frequency instead of transforming it. They're adding energy to a misaligned signal instead of cleaning up the transmission. Mastery, according to Thoth's understanding, means learning to hold a clear, consistent frequency regardless of external circumstances. When your bank account is low, you maintain the energetic signature of abundance. When you're single, you embody the frequency of someone worthy of extraordinary love. When facing challenges, you hold the vibration of someone who knows that obstacles are simply course corrections, not evidence of unworthiness. This isn't about positive thinking or emotional bypassing. It's about genuine nervous system reprogramming and energetic alignment. The quantum field is always listening, always responding, always mirroring back exactly what you're authentically transmitting. The question isn't whether this works. The question is, what frequency are you actually broadcasting right now? Now here's where most people get lost in the quantum shifting conversation. They want to know the secret technique, the magic formula, the one weird trick that changes everything overnight. But Thoth understood something that modern seekers miss entirely. Quantum coherence isn't built on techniques, it's built on states of being. Think of it like tuning a musical instrument. You can know every song ever written, but if your strings are out of tune, the music sounds terrible. Most people are trying to play quantum symphonies on completely untuned instruments, then wondering why nothing works. Thoth identified 4 fundamental pillars that create the energetic coherence necessary for effortless reality shifting. These aren't skills you practice once and master, they're ongoing states you cultivate until they become your natural way of being. The first pillar, self-awareness. This isn't the self-awareness your therapist talks about. This is something far more precise and powerful. True self-awareness is the ability to witness your thoughts and emotions without being hijacked by them. It's like becoming the scientist observing your own experiment, rather than being the experiment itself. Thoth maintained this kind of crystalline objectivity while recording the cosmic laws. He could observe the entire spectrum of human experience: rage, ecstasy, terror, bliss, without losing his center. This wasn't emotional numbness, it was emotional mastery through pure witnessing. Here's what this looks like practically. You're driving and someone cuts you off. The old you immediately generates anger, righteous indignation, maybe some creative vocabulary. But with developed self-awareness, you catch that reaction in the space before it fully activates. You observe the anger arising without becoming the anger. You witness the story your mind wants to tell about this inconsiderate driver, without believing that story defines reality. This is radically different from self-improvement or psychological analysis. You're not trying to fix anything or understand why you react certain ways. You're simply watching the show of your own consciousness with complete neutrality. The technique is deceptively simple. Throughout your day, ask yourself, what am I experiencing right now? Not why you're experiencing it, not how to change it, just what is actually happening in your internal landscape. Most people discover they've been unconscious passengers in their own minds for decades. The second pillar, radical responsibility. This pillar destroys most people's spiritual fantasies, which is exactly why it works. Radical responsibility means claiming ownership of your entire energetic output, including the unconscious patterns you don't even realize you're running. Thoth taught that we are co-creators of reality, not victims of circumstance. Everything appearing in your experience, every difficult person, every frustrating situation, every unexpected challenge, reflects something within your own consciousness. This isn't mystical wishful thinking, it's quantum mechanics in action. But here's the crucial distinction. This has nothing to do with blame or guilt. Those are ego reactions that actually block quantum shifts. Radical responsibility is about recognizing your power to change your vibrational signature, which automatically changes what you attract and experience. Let's say you keep attracting unreliable people into your life. The victim mentality says, why does this always happen to me? The self-improvement approach says, I need better boundaries. But radical responsibility asks, what frequency am I broadcasting that magnetizes unreliability? Maybe you're unconsciously afraid of deep commitment, so you attract people who can't commit fully. Maybe you don't truly believe you deserve consistent love, so you magnetize inconsistent people. The specific pattern doesn't matter. What matters is owning that your internal frequency is creating your external experience. This pillar requires brutal honesty about your unconscious programming. But once you truly accept that you're generating your reality through your energetic output, you realize you have the power to generate a completely different reality. The third pillar, accountability states. This is where quantum shifting gets practical. Accountability states are specific vibrational frequencies you commit to maintaining regardless of external circumstances. They become your energetic anchors in the storm of daily life. Thoth demonstrated this perfectly. Whether he was dealing with earthly politics or cosmic revelations, he maintained his connection to universal truth. His external circumstances fluctuated dramatically, but his internal state remained coherent with his highest understanding. Most people are energetic weather vanes, spinning with every external wind. Someone's rude to them, their frequency drops. They get good news, their frequency spikes. They're completely at the mercy of circumstances, which means they're living in reaction rather than creation. Accountability states flip this dynamic. You choose specific frequencies, maybe gratitude, curiosity, or peaceful power, and you hold those frequencies even when your current reality seems to contradict them. This is how you signal the quantum field to deliver experiences that match your chosen state rather than your current circumstances. Here's a concrete example. You want to shift into financial abundance, but your bank account shows scarcity. Instead of letting the bank balance determine your frequency, you maintain the energetic state of someone who has abundant resources. You feel genuinely grateful for money that hasn't appeared yet. You make decisions from abundance consciousness, even while managing current limitations practically. This isn't positive thinking or denial, it's frequency training. You're teaching the quantum field what reality you're committed to, experiencing. The fourth pillar, detachment from perception. This pillar dissolves the biggest barrier to quantum shifting, our addiction to interpreting everything that happens to us. Thoth understood that our perceptions of events often lock us into limited timelines because we assign meaning that creates energetic resistance. Think about linear time as a filing system. When you label an experience as terrible or wonderful, You file it in a specific category that determines how it affects your future. But quantum realities exist simultaneously across all possible timelines. Your interpretations determine which timeline you experience as real. Let's say you lose a job you really wanted. The conventional mind immediately files this under bad news and generates corresponding emotions, disappointment, worry, maybe some self-doubt. But what if this apparent setback is actually redirecting you towards something far better? What if the quantum field is orchestrating circumstances you can't see yet? Detachment from perception doesn't mean becoming emotionally flat or pretending everything is fine. It means holding your interpretations lightly, staying open to possibilities your current perspective can't grasp. You can feel disappointed about losing the job while simultaneously maintaining curiosity about what wants to emerge instead. Thoth practiced this by viewing all experiences as information rather than verdicts. A challenging situation wasn't bad, it was data about current frequency patterns. A wonderful opportunity wasn't good, it was feedback about energetic alignment. This neutrality kept him available to quantum possibilities that emotional reactivity would have blocked. These four pillars work together like legs on a table. Weakness in one affects the stability of the others. Self-awareness without responsibility becomes spiritual bypassing. Responsibility without accountability states becomes exhausting self-improvement. Accountability without detachment becomes rigid control. But when all four pillars develop together, something remarkable happens. You create the energetic foundation for effortless reality shifting. You become coherent enough for the quantum field to respond to your intentional frequencies rather than your unconscious patterns. And that's when quantum shifting stops being a technique you do and becomes a natural expression of who you are. There's a moment in every quantum shift that nobody talks about, the sacred threshold. It's that disorienting space where you're suspended between worlds, and honestly, it feels like you're losing your mind. Your old reality stops making sense. The job that felt secure suddenly feels suffocating. The relationship that was comfortable now feels foreign. The goals you were chasing seem to belong to someone else entirely. But here's the thing, the new reality hasn't shown up yet. You're floating in this weird liminal space, and every fiber of your being is screaming that something's wrong. Thoth understood this space better than anyone. He called it the sacred void, not empty nothingness, but pregnant potential. Think about it like this. Before a butterfly emerges, the caterpillar literally dissolves into soup inside the chrysalis. There's a moment where it's neither caterpillar nor butterfly, just undifferentiated potential reorganizing itself into something completely new. That's exactly what happens to your consciousness during quantum shifts. And just like that caterpillar soup, it feels like complete chaos from the inside. I remember working with someone who described it perfectly. She said, "It's like I woke up one morning and discovered I was wearing someone else's life. Everything I thought I wanted feels hollow, but I have no idea what I actually want instead." That confusion isn't a bug in the system, it's a feature. It's your consciousness literally upgrading its operating system. The symptoms show up in predictable ways. Sudden fatigue that sleep doesn't fix, that's your nervous system rewiring itself to handle higher frequencies. Emotional volatility where you're crying at commercials or getting angry at things that never bothered you before, that's old emotional patterns dissolving. Mental fog where you can't focus on tasks that used to be automatic, that's your brain refusing to engage with outdated programming. Most people panic at this point. They think they're having a breakdown, so they desperately try to force themselves back into the old patterns. They double down on the job they've outgrown, or try to salvage the relationship that's clearly finished, or push harder toward goals that no longer resonate. It's like trying to fit into clothes you wore in high school, technically possible but incredibly uncomfortable and ultimately pointless. Here's what Thoth taught about this phase. All genuine transformation requires dissolution. The old frequency patterns have to destabilize before new ones can anchor. It's like tuning a radio, there's always static between stations. That static isn't a malfunction, it's the necessary transition space. Your ego absolutely hates this phase because its entire job is maintaining familiar patterns. It interprets the dissolution as death, which technically it is, the death of who you used to be. So it floods your system with fear and doubt. What if you're making a mistake? What if you had it right before? What if this is just a phase, and you should go back to normal? But here's the energetic reality. Your field is literally recalibrating. Imagine your consciousness as a sophisticated instrument that's been operating at one frequency for years. Now it's shifting to a completely different bandwidth. During the transition, it has to release all the energetic patterns that kept it locked into the old frequency. That release process feels like falling apart, but it's actually the most precise reorganization happening at levels you can't consciously perceive. I've watched people go through this transition hundreds of times, and there are specific markers that tell you you're in the sacred threshold rather than just having a rough patch. First, the confusion is existential, not circumstantial. It's not, "I don't know what to do about this situation." It's, "I don't know who I am anymore." Second, your old coping mechanisms stop working. The things that used to comfort or motivate you feel foreign. Third, you start noticing synchronicities and meaningful coincidences, signs that the quantum field is responding to your shifting frequency. The key to navigating this space is counterintuitive. You have to stop trying to figure it out. Your logical mind is operating with outdated maps of reality. It's like trying to navigate Los Angeles with a map of New York. The harder you try, the more lost you get. Instead, you need to learn what Thoth mastered, the art of conscious uncertainty. He accessed infinite wisdom not by demanding answers, but by becoming comfortable in the space of not knowing. He understood that the void state is where all possibilities exist simultaneously, and trying to collapse that potential too quickly limits what can emerge. Practically, this means developing a different relationship with the discomfort. When the confusion hits, instead of fighting it, you breathe into it. When the old path disappears, instead of frantically searching for a new one, you sit in the pathlessness. When your identity feels shaky, instead of grasping for familiar roles, you explore who you might become. Your nervous system is literally upgrading during this phase. It's learning to hold more coherence, more power, more complexity. But upgrades are inherently destabilizing. Have you ever noticed how your computer runs slowly when it's installing updates? Same principle. Your consciousness is installing new software, and the installation process requires all your background programs to temporarily shut down. The fatigue you feel isn't weakness, it's your system allocating energy to fundamental reconstruction. The emotional volatility isn't instability, it's old emotional patterns being cleared from your cellular memory. The mental fog isn't confusion, it's your mind refusing to engage with thoughts that belong to your previous operating system. Here's something most people miss. The intensity of the threshold experience is directly proportional to the magnitude of the shift coming. If you feel like your entire world is dissolving, congratulations. You're about to quantum leap into something extraordinary. Small shifts create small disruptions. Massive shifts create massive dissolution phases. The secret is learning to interpret the chaos as calibration rather than catastrophe. When everything feels uncertain, you're not lost, you're being recalibrated for a reality that requires a completely different version of you. When you feel like you're falling apart, you're actually being reorganized at a molecular level to match a higher frequency. The most important thing to remember during this phase is that stillness is more powerful than action. The urge to do something, anything, to make the discomfort stop is overwhelming. But forced action from the threshold space usually just delays the process. It's like trying to rush a butterfly out of its chrysalis. You'll damage the wings. Instead, you practice what I call conscious hovering. You stay present with the uncertainty without trying to resolve it. You feel the dissolution without resisting it. You trust the process even when you can't see where it's leading. Thoth spent years mastering this state, and it's where his greatest wisdom emerged. Not from having all the answers, but from becoming so comfortable with not knowing that infinite possibilities could flow through him. That's the real secret of the sacred threshold. It's not a problem to be solved, but a space to be inhabited until something genuinely new can be born. If you're feeling shaky, right now, if your old life no longer fits but the new one hasn't arrived yet, you're not having a breakdown. You're having a breakthrough. The shakiness means you're close. The uncertainty means you're exactly where you need to be. The dissolution means something unprecedented is about to emerge. Stay in the chrysalis a little longer. What's coming is worth the wait. Here's the thing about quantum communication that'll probably shock you. The field doesn't listen to your words. It doesn't even care about your visualizations or affirmations. What it reads is your complete energetic signature. every suppressed emotion, every unconscious belief, every pattern locked into your nervous system. And here's where it gets uncomfortable. Most people are broadcasting the exact opposite of what they think they want. Thoth understood this fundamental principle: energy never lies. You can tell yourself you're worthy of abundance while your body language screams insecurity. You can visualize success while your nervous system operates from pure survival mode. The quantum field receives all of it, and it responds to the strongest, most consistent signal, which is usually coming from your subconscious programming. Let me give you a real example. I worked with someone who did abundance affirmations every morning for 2 years. Beautiful visualizations, positive self-talk, the whole package. But when we looked at her actual energetic broadcast, here's what the field was receiving: anxiety about money conversations, physical tension when discussing investments, and an unconscious belief that wealthy people were somehow morally corrupt. Her conscious mind wanted financial freedom, but her nervous system was coded with her grandmother's Depression-era scarcity programming. The field responded to the stronger signal, the one coming from decades of unconscious conditioning. Her manifestations? Exactly what her deeper programming expected: just enough money to survive, with constant worry about losing it. This is what Thoth called energetic contradiction, when your conscious desires and unconscious embodiment are broadcasting completely different frequencies. Most people live in this state without realizing it. They wonder why their manifestations feel forced, why there are constant delays, why they keep creating the same patterns despite their best conscious efforts. Your nervous system is your primary transmission device. Think of it like a radio tower broadcasting 24/7. Trauma creates static. Chronic stress distorts the signal. Unresolved emotional patterns create interference. The field receives this garbled transmission and responds accordingly, with garbled results. I've seen this pattern hundreds of times. Someone affirms self-love while internally running constant self-criticism. Their energetic broadcast: self-rejection with a thin overlay of positive thinking. The relationships they attract reflect the deeper signal: partners who mirror their internal self-treatment, not their conscious affirmations. Or take the entrepreneur visualizing business success while their body holds trauma from childhood criticism. Every time they step into visibility, their nervous system triggers fight or flight responses. They're broadcasting confidence through their words and fear through their energy. The market responds to the energetic truth: inconsistent results, self-sabotage right before breakthroughs, opportunities that dissolve unexpectedly. Thoth achieved perfect signal clarity through complete alignment between conscious intent and subconscious embodiment. He didn't just think different thoughts, he transformed the underlying patterns that generated those thoughts. His nervous system, emotional body, mental patterns, and conscious intentions all broadcast the same frequency. This is why most manifestation attempts create delays or distortions. The field receives mixed messages and literally cannot interpret what you actually want. Imagine trying to tune into a radio station that's broadcasting 3 different songs simultaneously. You'd get noise, fragments, maybe pieces of each song, but never the clear transmission you're seeking. Here's what energetic leakage looks like in practice. You set an intention, then immediately start calculating how it might happen. That's doubt leaking power from your signal. You visualize your desired outcome while feeling urgent about the timing. That urgency broadcasts lack, the opposite of what you're trying to create. You affirm abundance while performing for results, checking constantly to see if it's working. That performance energy contradicts the natural flow you're attempting to align with. The field reads your complete energetic signature, including the parts you're unconscious of. Your breathing patterns, muscle tension, automatic thoughts, emotional reactions to triggers, all of this creates your broadcast frequency. Most people focus on managing their conscious thoughts, while remaining completely unaware of the deeper patterns running the show. So how do you clean your signal? Start with nervous system awareness. Notice what happens in your body when you think about your desires. Does your breathing change? Do certain muscles tense? Does anxiety arise? These physical responses reveal unconscious programming that's contradicting your conscious intentions. I learned to track energetic contradictions by paying attention to the gap between my words and my body's response. When I said, "I'm open to receiving," but my shoulders tensed up, that tension was part of my broadcast. When I visualized success but felt a subtle anxiety in my stomach, that anxiety was louder than my visualization. Healing these contradictions isn't about forcing coherence or suppressing the uncomfortable responses. It's about bringing unconscious patterns into awareness and allowing them to transform naturally. When you acknowledge the scared part of you that doesn't believe you deserve what you want, that acknowledgement begins shifting the pattern. True signal clarity emerges from authentic alignment, not perfect thoughts or emotions, but honest integration of all aspects of your being. When your conscious desires and unconscious patterns start broadcasting the same frequency, your manifestations become effortless and natural. The field responds to authenticity, not performance. When you stop trying to broadcast the right signal and start embodying genuine alignment, everything changes. Your nervous system relaxes into its natural state. Your energy becomes coherent. Your transmission becomes clear. This is the foundation that makes quantum shifting possible, not perfect control over your thoughts, but authentic alignment between all levels of your being. Here's something that'll completely shift how you understand reality creation. Quantum physicists have spent the last century discovering what Thoth knew thousands of years ago. Consciousness isn't just along for the ride, it's literally driving the car. The observer effect in quantum mechanics reveals something extraordinary. Subatomic particles exist in what scientists call superposition. They're essentially in all possible states simultaneously until someone observes them. The moment you look, all those infinite possibilities collapse into one specific reality. Your attention literally selects which version becomes real. Think about that for a second. The building blocks of everything around you, your phone, your coffee mug, your own body, only take definite form when consciousness interacts with them. Without observation, they exist as pure potential, wavering between all possible states like cosmic ghosts waiting for someone to notice them. Thoth understood this principle intimately. He taught that focused consciousness acts as a cosmic selector, reaching into the quantum field of infinite potential and pulling specific possibilities into manifestation. Every time you place your attention on something, you're essentially telling the universe, this one, make this real. But here's where most people completely miss the boat. They think manifestation is about those 5 minutes of morning visualization while spending the other 23 hours and 55 minutes focused on exactly what they don't want. You'll visualize abundance for 10 minutes, then spend your entire day thinking about bills, debt, and financial stress. You're giving the quantum field contradictory instructions, like pressing the gas and brake simultaneously. Let me give you a concrete example. Sarah wants to manifest her dream relationship. She spends 20 minutes each morning visualizing her perfect partner, feeling grateful, creating vision boards. Beautiful. But the rest of her day? She's scrolling through dating apps, feeling frustrated, complaining to friends about being single, watching romantic comedies that make her feel lonely, and falling asleep thinking about how everyone else finds love except her. What's Sarah actually broadcasting to the field? Loneliness, lack, frustration. Those 20 minutes of positive visualization are completely overwhelmed by 16 hours of focusing on what's missing. The quantum field receives her dominant signal and delivers more of the same. This isn't about positive thinking or forcing yourself to ignore reality. It's about understanding that your attention is literally a creative force. Where you place your focus consistently becomes your experience. The quantum field doesn't judge your thoughts as good or bad. It simply responds to where you direct your consciousness most frequently and with the most emotional intensity. Thoth achieved remarkable manifestations not through forced concentration, but through what I call natural absorption. There's a massive difference. Forced concentration creates internal struggle. You're fighting your own mind, trying to control every thought, creating tension and resistance. Natural absorption happens when you become genuinely interested in and aligned with what you're creating. Think about when you're completely absorbed in something you love, reading a fascinating book, having an engaging conversation, working on a project that excites you. Time disappears. Your attention flows naturally without effort. That's the state Thoth cultivated for reality creation. Not white-knuckling your focus, but allowing your consciousness to naturally gravitate toward your desired reality. Here's a crucial distinction most people miss. It's not about controlling your thoughts. It's about directing your attention with purpose and consistency. Thoughts will come and go like clouds in the sky, but you can choose which thoughts you give your sustained attention to. You can notice a worry thought and let it pass without feeding it your focus. The emotional charge behind your attention amplifies everything exponentially. When you focus on something with genuine excitement, gratitude, or passion, you're not just selecting that reality, you're turbocharging the selection process. Emotion is the accelerant that turns attention into manifestation. But scattered attention creates chaotic results. When your focus jumps between different desires, fears, and possibilities throughout the day, you're essentially giving the quantum field a constantly changing blueprint. One moment you're focused on career success, the next on relationship fears, then on health concerns, then on financial abundance, then back to relationship doubts. The field receives mixed signals and delivers mixed results. Most people unknowingly sabotage their manifestations by giving their strongest emotional attention to their problems rather than their possibilities. They think about their desired outcome briefly and intellectually, but they feel their current challenges deeply and consistently. Since emotion amplifies attention, guess which signal the field receives most powerfully? Here's how to develop what I call attention discipline, without creating internal warfare. First, become aware of your attention patterns throughout the day. Notice where your mind naturally gravitates. Don't judge it, just observe. You might discover you spend 80% of your mental energy on problems and only 20% on possibilities. Second, practice gentle redirection. When you catch your attention drifting toward what you don't want, simply guide it back to what you do want, like training a puppy, gentle, consistent, patient. No self-criticism, no frustration, just loving redirection. Third, create what I call attention anchors throughout your day. These are specific moments when you deliberately connect with your desired reality. Maybe it's while drinking your morning coffee, or during your commute, or right before sleep. Consistent, emotionally charged attention at regular intervals. The key is allowing natural flow while maintaining purposeful direction. You're not trying to control every thought, you're becoming conscious of where you place your sustained focus and emotional energy. You're learning to be the director of your own attention rather than a victim of random mental chatter. Remember, the quantum field is always responding to your consciousness. It's not waiting for you to get it perfect, it's responding to your dominant patterns right now. Every moment of focused attention is an instruction to reality. Every emotional charge you give to a thought is an amplification of that instruction. Start noticing your attention patterns today. Where does your mind spend most of its time? What thoughts carry the strongest emotional charge? This awareness alone begins shifting your relationship with reality creation. Mastering attention is mastering reality itself. When you understand that your consciousness is literally selecting which version of infinite possibilities becomes your lived experience, everything changes. You stop being a passive observer of your life and become its conscious creator. Here's the thing, that's going to blow your mind. You're not trying to become someone new, you're trying to remember who you've always been. Thoth understood something that modern psychology is just beginning to grasp. Every possibility, every version of yourself you've ever dreamed of becoming already exists within you right now. We're not talking about potential in some abstract sense. We're talking about actual, living aspects of your consciousness that are as real as the version of you reading these words. Think about it this way. When you observe a quantum particle, you're not creating its position out of nothing. You're selecting which of its infinite possible positions becomes manifest in this reality. The same principle applies to your identity. You're not building a new self from scratch. You're choosing which aspect of your infinite nature gets to step forward and express itself. Most people approach personal transformation completely backwards. They look at their current circumstances and think, I need to become the kind of person who could have a different life. But here's what actually happens in quantum shifting. The field responds to who you're being, not who you're trying to become. There's a massive difference between these two approaches, and it's the difference between struggling for years with minimal results and experiencing rapid, seemingly miraculous changes. When you try to become someone new, you're operating from the assumption that your current identity is fixed and you need to build something on top of it. This creates internal conflict because part of you is always defending the old identity while another part is trying to construct a new one. It's like trying to renovate a house while the current residents are fighting the construction crew. But when you recognize who you already are at your essence level, something entirely different happens. You're not adding anything new. You're removing what doesn't belong. You're clearing away the layers of conditioning, adaptation, and learned behaviors that have been obscuring your authentic nature. Thoth embodied this principle perfectly. He wasn't known for developing wisdom, creativity, and divine communication skills. These weren't achievements he worked toward. They were expressions of his essential nature that he allowed to flow freely. The difference is everything. Here's where most people get stuck. They confuse personality with essence. Your personality is the collection of learned behaviors, coping mechanisms, and adaptive strategies you've developed to navigate the world. It's not who you are. It's what you've done to survive and fit in. Your essence is something completely different. It's the core frequency of your being that existed before you learned to modify yourself for approval, safety, or belonging. It's the part of you that knows things without being taught, that recognizes truth instantly, that feels most alive when you're expressing your authentic nature. Most of us lost touch with our essence somewhere between ages 5 and 15. We learned that certain aspects of ourselves were welcomed and others weren't. We discovered that expressing our authentic nature sometimes led to rejection, criticism, or punishment. So we adapted. We created personas that would be more acceptable, more lovable, more successful. The problem is, we've been wearing these personas for so long that we've forgotten their costumes. We think the adapted version is who we really are. When someone suggests we could be different, we panic because we think they're asking us to destroy ourselves. But here's what Thoth taught. The death of the false self is the rebirth of the true self. What feels like dissolution to the ego is actually liberation for your essence. I want you to try something. Think about moments in your life when you felt most alive, most authentic, most like yourself. Not when you were performing well or meeting expectations, but when you were simply being. Notice the quality of energy in those moments. That's your essence frequency. Now think about how you show up most of the time. Notice the difference. That gap between your essence frequency and your everyday persona is where your power is hidden. The beautiful thing about identity shifting is that you don't have to figure out how to become authentic. Authenticity isn't a skill you develop. It's a natural state you return to by removing what's artificial. But let's be honest about what happens when you start this process. It's disorienting. When you begin to shed familiar but limiting identities, everyone around you, including you, might feel like they don't know who you are anymore. Relationships that were built on your adapted persona might feel strained. Circumstances that matched your old identity might start to feel uncomfortable. This isn't a sign that you're doing something wrong. It's a sign that you're doing something real. Here's how to navigate this transition. Instead of rejecting or fighting your current experience, practice identity integration. This means acknowledging your adapted persona while consciously choosing to express more of your essence. You're not destroying the old self. You're expanding into the fuller version of who you've always been. When you feel that familiar discomfort of being between identities, remind yourself that this is exactly what quantum shifting feels like from the inside. You're literally existing in multiple states simultaneously until the new reality stabilizes. The field is incredibly responsive to authentic identity shifts because authenticity carries a specific energetic signature that's unmistakable. When you stop trying to convince the universe that you're someone you're not and start expressing who you actually are, everything begins to reorganize itself around that truth. Your relationships naturally realign to match your authentic frequency. Opportunities that resonate with your essence start appearing. Circumstances that supported your false identity begin to fall away, not through struggle or loss, but through natural evolution. This is why trying to change your life without changing your identity creates temporary results at best. You might achieve external changes through willpower and effort, but unless your core identity shifts, you'll unconsciously recreate patterns that match who you believe yourself to be. The reality you desire isn't something you need to create from nothing. It's something you need to recognize and embody. Every version of yourself that could live that reality already exists within your infinite nature. Your job isn't to build a new identity. It's to remember which aspect of your eternal self you came here to express. Here's the thing about quantum shifting that most people discover the hard way. Accessing a new timeline and actually living there permanently are completely different skills. Thoth understood this distinction thousands of years ago. He described it like the difference between visiting a foreign country as a tourist and actually becoming a citizen. One requires a passport and curiosity. The other demands you learn the language, understand the culture, and integrate into an entirely new way of being. I've watched countless people experience genuine quantum shifts, moments where they clearly access a higher frequency, where synchronicities flow like water, where their entire reality seems to reorganize around their new identity. Then, within days or weeks, they're back exactly where they started, wondering if any of it was real. The shift was real. What they lacked was energetic consistency. Think about what happens in your nervous system when you step into a new frequency. Your brain, which has spent years or decades wiring itself to operate from your old identity, suddenly encounters completely unfamiliar territory. Every neural pathway you've built, every emotional response pattern you've developed, every subconscious program running in the background is calibrated to your previous timeline. These established patterns create what Thoth called energetic gravity, a constant pull back toward the familiar. This isn't some mystical concept. Neuroscience shows us that our brains literally resist new patterns. The default mode network in your brain is constantly trying to return you to baseline, to what it recognizes as normal. When you quantum shift, you're essentially asking your entire nervous system to abandon everything it knows about who you are and how reality works. Without conscious intervention, that system will drag you back to familiar territory every single time. The old timeline doesn't just disappear when you shift. It continues to exist, and it will actively attempt to reassert itself through every familiar pattern it can access. Your phone will ring with calls from people who knew the old you. Circumstances will arise that trigger your previous emotional responses. Opportunities will appear that match your former identity, rather than your new one. This isn't the universe testing you. It's the natural momentum of established energy patterns seeking to maintain themselves. Thoth spoke extensively about what he called frequency fidelity, your ability to maintain your energetic signature even when external evidence suggests the old reality is still present. This is perhaps the most challenging aspect of quantum shifting, because your logical mind will constantly point to evidence that nothing has changed. Your bank account looks the same. Your relationships operate from the same dynamics. Your daily circumstances appear unchanged. But here's what most people don't understand about quantum timelines. They have a settling period. During this phase, which can last weeks or even months, both old and new realities appear to coexist. You might have a profound breakthrough experience in the morning, then find yourself caught in familiar patterns by afternoon. You might receive clear signs that your new timeline is manifesting, then wake up the next day feeling exactly like your old self. This coexistence creates tremendous confusion and doubt. Your rational mind interprets the fluctuation as evidence that the shift wasn't real, that you're deluding yourself, that you should abandon this fantasy and return to practical reality. This is the critical juncture where most people lose their new timeline entirely. Navigating this transition requires what I call energetic boundaries, the ability to protect your new frequency from people, situations, and internal patterns that would pull you back into old operating systems. This doesn't mean isolating yourself or becoming rigid. It means developing discernment about what energies you allow into your field while your new identity is still stabilizing. Thoth maintained connection to higher frequencies while managing earthly responsibilities by treating his daily practices not as rigid disciplines, but as loving reminders of who he was choosing to be. He understood that consistency doesn't mean perfection. It means returning to your chosen frequency quickly and without self-judgment when you notice you've drifted. The key is learning to recognize the difference between slipping back into old patterns and experiencing natural fluctuations within your new frequency. Old patterns feel heavy, familiar, and often accompanied by self-criticism or resignation. Natural fluctuations within your new frequency feel lighter, even when challenging, and maintain an underlying sense of expansion and possibility. When you catch yourself operating from old patterns, the course correction is simple but requires practice. Don't make it dramatic. Don't judge yourself for the slip. Simply ask, who am I choosing to be right now? Then make one small choice from your new identity. Answer that email differently. Choose a different response to that trigger. Take one action that aligns with your new timeline. Your environment and community play crucial roles in timeline stabilization. The people around you have energetic expectations about who you are. They've learned to relate to your old identity, and they'll unconsciously attempt to evoke familiar responses from you. This isn't malicious. It's how human nervous systems maintain predictable social dynamics. But it means you need to consciously choose relationships and environments that support your new frequency while you're stabilizing. Some relationships will naturally evolve to match your new timeline. Others will fade as you no longer energetically match their frequency. New connections will appear that resonate with who you're becoming. Trust this process, even when it feels uncomfortable. Your new timeline includes relationships that truly see and support your authentic self. The art of stabilization lies in gentle consistency rather than rigid control. You're not trying to force yourself into a new shape or maintain some perfect energetic state. You're simply choosing, moment by moment, to operate from your new identity until that becomes as natural as breathing. You're allowing your nervous system to gradually rewire itself around this expanded version of who you are. The timeline you've accessed is already real. Your job now is to become a permanent resident rather than just a visitor. Every choice you make from your new identity strengthens the neural pathways that will make this frequency your natural home. This is how Thoth maintained his connection to higher consciousness while navigating human existence. Not through perfection, but through loving consistency. Not by forcing change, but by gently, persistently choosing who he knew himself to be until that choice became effortless. The most profound teaching Thoth ever shared wasn't about achieving enlightenment. It was about recognizing that enlightenment is simply the quality of presence you bring to this moment, right now. Not tomorrow when you've meditated. Enough, not next year when you've healed your trauma, but in the space between these words and your next breath. Here's what separates someone who occasionally uses quantum principles from someone who has fully integrated them. The occasional user still believes they live in a solid world and sometimes remembers to shift it. The integrated being knows that reality is always quantum, consciousness is always creating, and they're simply choosing which frequency to tune into moment by moment. Thoth didn't perform miracles. He lived from the understanding that the miraculous is the natural state of consciousness when it's not filtered through limitation. When you truly integrate this knowing, quantum shifting stops being something you do and becomes something you are. You're not trying to bend reality. You're recognizing that reality was always bending around your consciousness. The difference is unmistakable once you see it. Someone still trying to achieve integration walks into a room thinking about how to shift the energy. Someone who has integrated it finds that their energy enters rooms before they do, naturally harmonizing the space without effort or intention. They speak less because they've learned that presence communicates more than words ever could, yet when they do speak, people listen with an attention that surprises everyone involved. What most people call synchronicities become so natural that you stop remarking on them. Of course, the perfect person calls at the perfect moment. Of course, the solution appears just as you need it. Of course, the universe rearranges itself around your clarity. This isn't magic, it's how consciousness and reality have always danced together. You just stopped interfering with the dance. The seeking ends not because you've found everything, but because you've realized you were never actually lost. That desperate hunger for external validation transforms into an unshakable trust in your internal guidance system. You stop asking others what they think about your decisions because you've remembered how to hear the whisper of your own infinite wisdom. This is where most spiritual teachings get it backwards. They tell you to hold your frequency regardless of circumstances through discipline and effort. True integration happens when you realize you don't need to hold anything. You are the frequency. Circumstances become like weather patterns moving through an unchanging sky. You notice them, sometimes you dance with them, but they don't fundamentally alter what you are. Watch how your relationships transform when you stop trying to get anything from anyone. When you're complete within yourself, you become magnetic to others who are drawn to that completeness. Your work stops feeling like work because you're expressing your natural frequency rather than forcing yourself into someone else's definition of productivity. Even mundane activities like grocery shopping or washing dishes become opportunities to practice presence, to feel the quantum field responding to your awareness. Thoth demonstrated this perfectly. He could simultaneously exist as a physical being walking among humans while maintaining conscious connection to infinite dimensions of possibility. This isn't about escaping physical reality. It's about recognizing that physical reality is just one octave in an infinite symphony of consciousness. You develop this beautiful paradox of caring deeply about everything while holding it all lightly. You're fully engaged in life, but not desperately attached to specific outcomes. You make plans while remaining open to something even better emerging. You love completely while honoring everyone's freedom to choose their own path. Here's how you know when you're still trying versus when you're living it. Trying feels effortful, like pushing against resistance. Living it feels like flowing with a current that was always carrying you toward your highest good. When you catch yourself forcing, You simply relax back into trust. When you notice you're seeking, you remember you already are what you're seeking. The evolution never stops, even after integration. Consciousness doesn't have a ceiling. It keeps expanding into greater expressions of itself through you. But this expansion happens naturally, like a flower blooming, rather than through struggle or striving. Something beautiful happens when you fully embody this understanding. You become a living transmission. People feel something different around you, though they might not be able to name it. Your very presence activates their remembrance of their own infinite nature. You don't try to fix or save anyone because you see their wholeness even when they can't see it themselves. You hold space for their awakening without attachment to whether or when it happens. This is the ultimate quantum shift, from believing you're a separate being trying to manipulate reality, to knowing your consciousness itself exploring what it means to be human. Every moment becomes an opportunity to choose which aspect of your infinite self you want to express. If you've made it this far in this video, something profound is already shifting inside you. These aren't just concepts you're learning, they're remembrances of what you've always known. The fact that these words resonate means you're already living from this understanding more than you realize. If this video resonated with you, let us know by commenting, "I understood it."